That's one of the stories in the book is about my father, and I'll read just a short sort of introductory paragraph so you know who he was. He was 67 when he got a terminal diagnosis of a stage 4 brain tumor. So, and I was in my 30s, and I was living in Canada, and he was in Glasgow with my mum. And I'll read you just a couple of short paragraphs as an introduction, and then I'll read about the time when he actually died. I'd like to share that story. It's very obviously precious to me, and it was quite a long time ago now, but you know, as with stories, you can come right back into the moment with our own stories, which are helpful and comforting at times, I think. So this is from my book, Radical Acts of Love. Dad was diagnosed with a stage 4 brain tumor. He called me to come home the day after he got the news. Perhaps he felt that I would know what to do, since I had worked as an oncology nurse for 15 years by then. However, for me, my career dissolved during that phone conversation. I was a daughter, not a nurse then, and working with other people with cancer while my father was dying made no sense. I took leave and planned a trip to Scotland, where I'd spend most of the next 13 weeks of my father's illness. Sudden memory loss had taken him to his family doctor. The scan showed a large, inoperable brain tumor. His oncologist said treating a glioblastoma was futile, that the side effects would strip him of dignity for the time he had left. No surgery, chemotherapy, or radiation meant a sure death, but also the hope of a dignified one. We sent the nurse home earlier than usual the night Dad died. My 2 sisters and I felt uncomfortable sitting across the room from a relative stranger in the intimate space that my parents had shared for 38 years. Most people's breathing slows down at the end of life, but my father's sped up. He sounded like he was working hard. His eyelids were closed, and the skin on his face looked as youthful as his soft brown hair, not yet gray. As a kid, I remember rubbing the palm of my hand against his close-shaven chin and giggling at the roughness of it. There was something about his maleness that intrigued me. Mum sat close, her hand in his. Every few moments, she stroked his face or his hair and said, "It's okay, Bill." Even with the imminent separation from her beloved, she seemed to know that death was merciful. The creases of worry in her face were softer. Death wasn't frightening. It was natural. A wife, 3 daughters, and a daughter-in-law were accompanying a great man out of this world. It surprised us when his eyes opened wide. The green was brighter than I had remembered. He looked directly at my mother, and she was there to receive him. Those seconds would last forever as I felt the depth of 38 years pass between them. Love like that had no need for words. Then, his last breath, in or out, I don't know. No petering out, though, just the one breath, and then the great silence that fell upon us. We never forget those last moments. I think any of us who've been at the death of a loved one they live on in us, I think, for the rest of our lives. And of course, they sit with such, such deep sorrow and poignancy. And yet there's something sacred or even beautiful and can be in those moments. And it's certainly not true for everyone, obviously. But if we're blessed enough to be able to witness a passage like that, I think it holds us up to really deeply understand that death doesn't have to be a terrifying or frightening ordeal. And I think that's the gift. And often I ask people who are very frightened of death, even if they're not ill themselves, I often say, well, get closer to it. Like perhaps go and be a volunteer in a hospice. And as you said, we're unfamiliar. So watch that and be with people. And it empowers us. It gives us courage. You can gather courage that, okay, this is something that I can do and that I can do for and with my loved ones. So I'm just so deeply honored that I got to be with my father at the end of his life like that, because there's so many times people miss that opportunity. And of course, especially right now where people can't necessarily be with their loved ones, it is really a deep honor to walk with someone across that, to that threshold, and to, gather up all the memories of that life that you've shared with the person. And it's all there. It's all there in that moment. It's all there in those moments at the end, all the lives lived and the stories that come back during that time where you're saying goodbye.